So look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah! What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. The Detroit Lions are set to take on the Carolina Panthers this week, a team that they met just 6 weeks ago in the preseason and played very, very strongly. The Detroit Lions ended up, of course, winning that preseason game by a pretty healthy margin and looked like the superior team in all aspects. But of course, preseason and regular season are very, very different. And the Detroit Lions got off to a very different start to their regular season than the Carolina Panthers did. The Detroit Lions are coming off of a week of absolutely incredible highs. The Detroit Lions took on the Green Bay Packers, the division rivals in Green Bay, on Thursday Night Football a week ago from today to take sole control of the NFC North. They ended up winning that game 34-20, having a major W in the division, taking a game-and-a-half lead over anybody else who's looking to stop their run. Well, the Carolina Panthers are off to an 0-4 start. After playing a very close game versus the Minnesota Vikings a week ago, they unfortunately fell to 0-4 after a 21-13 loss. Doesn't necessarily mean that the Detroit Lions are guaranteed a victory today. And just like we've done over the last 4 weeks, today I want to go over the matchups of this game. I want to go over the strengths and weaknesses of both teams, the upcoming news about both teams going into this week, and give an overall picture of how this game is going to shape out, how this game is potentially going to look, and who should be the favorite going into this game. Now, as a side note, the Detroit Lions are currently 8.5-point favorites to my knowledge. This is the biggest spread for the Detroit Lions in favor of the Detroit Lions since taking on the 0-17 Cleveland Browns back in 2000, or 0-16 Cleveland Browns all the way back in 2007. It's a massive spread for the Detroit Lions. They are huge favorites at home this week. But let's take a look at whether or not they should be. Taking a look at the Detroit Lions first, they have been a very strong team. Of course, starting 3-1, beating the Chiefs, beating the Packers in Lambeau, and really your two most impressive wins coming in two of the most hostile environments in the NFL is very, very impressive. They currently rank 8th. They currently rank 8th in points scored on the season. They rank 8th in passing offense while ranking top 10 in the NFL in rushing offense. Pretty much every aspect of their team so far on the offensive side of the ball has been in the top 10, and that is while sustaining injuries to the offensive line. That is while sustaining injuries and suspensions by the receiving core. That is why sustaining injuries to the running back core. The Detroit Lions have not been fully healthy for really any game this season and really haven't been at full strength with Jameson Williams being out the entire season thus far. And yet they do rank 8th in points. They do rank 8th in passing offense, and they do rank 10th among teams in rushing yards per game. Now, everybody knew that the Detroit Lions were going to have a strong offense in 2023, but what we didn't really know is how the defense was going to look, and they've come out and they've looked pretty good. All we asked this year is that the Detroit Lions were an average defense, and so far this year, I would argue they've even been an above average defense. The Detroit Lions rank 13th in points allowed this year. That is a massive increase from where the Detroit Lions were a season ago, as they ranked 31st in 2022 as far as points scored. They have now upped that to 13th best in the NFL, an above average scoring defense. And really their only big knock has been that Seattle game. They allowed, I believe, 17 They allowed 21 points to Kansas City. They allowed just 6 points to Atlanta, and they allowed just 20 points to the Green Bay Packers, and really only had a bad third quarter in that game. So their defense, as far as points scored, has been phenomenal. They've had a few communication errors in the secondary, leading them to be the 18th ranked defense versus the pass, but they have more than made up for that on the ground, as they rank as the number one rushing defense in the NFL. And I will repeat that again because it's been a long time since the Lions have been number one in any defensive category. They are the number one rushing attack in the NFL, and that plays into their favor a lot. That puts their opponents in a lot of second and long, a lot of third and long. It doesn't allow them to stay on rhythm and stay on script, and it leaves the Detroit Lions an opportunity to get off the field and, of course, get the ball back to their high-scoring offense. But the Carolina Panthers are up next. Now, the Carolina Panthers are not quite as successful this season as the Detroit Lions. They rank just 24th in the NFL as far as scoring points. They rank 23rd in the NFL as far as passing offense and 22nd in the NFL when it comes to a rushing attack. On the defensive side of the ball, not a whole lot better, ranking 25th in points allowed, but ranking 6th against the pass. Their secondary and pass rush has actually been very impressive this year. And they've actually put the Carolina Panthers in positions to win a couple of weeks in a row, but the offense has yet to be able to find that drive and find that ability to put them over the top and find themselves a first victory. Now, the rushing defense isn't very good, ranking 27th in the league, allowing 4.7 yards per carry. Carolina's defense isn't good overall, but their passing defense has been pretty successful. Unfortunately, the rest of their team is a little bit less so. Now, taking a look, usually we go over matchups. We take a look at who's better on each side of the ball. But quite honestly, I think the Detroit Lions, and you might call me biased, I think the Detroit Lions are the better football team across the board. I truly think this is a clean sweep for the Detroit Lions this week. I think their quarterback is better, more accomplished, and a little bit more in tune to this season as Jared Goff is, as opposed to Bryce Young. Jared Goff is a longtime veteran. Bryce Young is playing in his 4th career game. Bryce Young hasn't looked phenomenal to start the season, and really, it seems as though the Carolina Panthers are babying him into his NFL career. I think the Detroit Lions have a much stronger running back core with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. David Montgomery, of course, coming off his 32 carries, 122 yards, and 3 rushing touchdowns on the ground versus the Green Bay Packers front seven that is significantly more talented than the Carolina Panthers front seven. Their wide receiving core, while neither team has necessarily an elite wide receiving core, I do think that Amon-Ra St. Brown, Josh Reynolds, even Marvin Jones and Khalif Raymond, with the addition now of Jameson Williams, is a better wide receiving core than Adam Thielen, DJ Chark, Jonathan Mingo, and the likes. Tight end wise, it's pretty simple, right? Sam Laporta leads all tight ends in receiving yards this season. He has been an elite tight end through the first 4 games of his NFL career. That is an easy take right there for the Detroit Lions, as is the offensive line. They have a top 2 offensive line in football, arguably the best. The Lions' defensive line has been really good. Over the last 2 games, the Detroit Lions have had 12 sacks in an incredible pressure rate. Aiden Hutchinson currently has 3.5 sacks on the season. He leads the NFL, or is tied for leading the NFL in pressures this year. The Detroit Lions have a great pass rush. That defensive line and edge rushing core are a primary factor for it. While I do think that the Carolina Panthers have a very strong edge rushing class, I do think that the Detroit Lions have been a better group this season. The linebacking core is a little bit similar. I do think the Panthers have some strong linebackers, but I think that the Detroit Lions have some linebackers playing a little bit better. Jack Campbell is great when he's on the field. Derek Barnes looks like a first-round pick at linebacker after 2 seasons on the bench. He looks to have had a great start to his 3rd season in the NFL. Alex Anzalone is good, as is Malcolm Rodriguez. That linebacking core is playing great, a primary factor as to why they are the number 1 rushing defense in the NFL. They are great. The secondary, despite not being phenomenal this season, Jerry Jacobs is tied for second in the NFL with 2 interceptions. Cam Sutton is playing like an elite cornerback, and the Detroit Lions are expected to welcome back Emmanuel Mosley this week to the secondary in that cornerback group. Safety group is one of the deepest in the NFL. Ifeatu Melifonwu and Tracy Walker have been great over the last 2 weeks and have been big parts of the Detroit Lions wins, and this week they're going to welcome back Kirby Joseph to that secondary as well. Now, unfortunately, Brian Branch likely is going to miss this game, but even with that safety trio, I do think they have one of the best safety rooms in the NFL, and I do think it is a little bit better than the Carolina Panthers after putting their starting free safety on injured reserves 2 weeks ago. Now, I do want to talk about the Carolina Panthers because I don't think they're necessarily a bad football team across the board. I do think they've gotten relatively unlucky, and I do think that their defense is actually a strength of this team. I think if you're looking at the over-under for this game, or you're trying to take over-unders for the Detroit Lions offensive stats, I think I'd probably go with the under. The Carolina pass rush has been very strong this year. Their secondary has played above, I think, what their talent on paper would have you believe, and their defense really hasn't been all that bad. They've given up some chunk plays on the ground. They've given up some points for sure, but as far as individual players, their strengths lie on the defense. Brian Burns is great. Frankie Louvu is really strong. Jeremy Chin, I believe, is still healthy and playing really well. And they have some strong guys in that secondary and linebacking core as well. I think the defense is going to keep it close early, but I do think the lack of offensive production is going to be the downfall of this team. And I think the Lions could very much pull away in the second half, but I think the first half is going to be a pretty tight battle between two teams that have some talent on both sides of the football. Now, where the Panthers really struggle is protection. They have given up a lot of sacks this season on both Bryce Young as well as Andy Dalton, leading to Bryce Young having to miss a game already early into his NFL career, which was a big problem for him as a prospect. Offensively, not very good. They have not ranked higher than 22nd in any offensive category this year. Bryce Young seems to be very limited in the playbook. The wide receivers aren't really making that many plays outside of Adam Thielen, who's been a solid wide receiver one for Bryce Young so far. The offensive line can't pass protect. The offensive line can't really run block. The wide receivers aren't creating that much separation, and the running backs aren't creating too much after the contact. So offensively, they're really going to struggle. And against a team like the Detroit Lions, who's really finding their stride on defense, I think it's going to be really tough for Carolina to find a whole lot of rhythm this week. With the pass rush coming in, with the run-stopping ability, it's going to be tough for Carolina to score some points. And then, as I said, I think their biggest weakness on defense is that rushing defense, allowing 4.7 yards per carry. That ranks 30th or 29th in the NFL. I believe 29th in the NFL is where the Carolina Panthers rank as far as yards per carry allowed. And that is really, I think, where the Detroit Lions are going to thrive. David Montgomery very well could get 30 carries again, and he could go for 120 yards and 3 touchdowns again. We could see a very similar repeat to what we saw on Thursday night, as the Panthers have a significantly worse rushing defense than the Green Bay Packers. We could see Jahmyr Gibbs get a lot of carries. We could see David Montgomery get a lot of carries. And that ground game, especially with Halapaloe Vaitai coming back potentially, as well as Taylor Decker becoming healthy, I do think that is going to lead to a very strong ground game for the Detroit Lions, and I do think they will be able to run the ball very effectively this week. Overall, now, one more thing I want to talk about for the Detroit Lions is the returning players. As I said, Emmanuel Moseley is expected to make his Detroit Lions debut this week, as well as Jameson Williams is expected to make his 2023 debut this week. Jameson Williams' suspension was cut short by 2 games. He was originally supposed to serve 6, now only set to serve 4. Those 4 games are over, meaning he is ready to suit up and take a spot for the Detroit Lions in their receiving room. And with Amon-Ra St. Brown potentially being out this week, it is a big get for the Detroit Lions, even if he only sees 1, 2, or 3 targets. He could still be a big part of this team, can still look to take the top off the defense, and still be a deep threat that Carolina very much has to account for. While Emmanuel Moseley was playing like a lockdown cornerback last year for the San Francisco 49ers throughout 5 games before tearing his ACL. He's officially back from his ACL/hamstring injury and should be rotating in and out with Jerry Jacobs as the cornerback too, both of whom are going to add some depth and some talent to this Lions team that is already playing with a lot of confidence and already playing like one of the top teams in the NFL. Now, overall, I think this game is going to go pretty heavily to the Detroit Lions. They are the home team. Jared Goff is an absolutely elite quarterback at home, and I think the Lions are the far more talented team in this matchup. As I said, I think that the pass rush for the Carolina Panthers is going to keep them in it early. I think the secondary is going to keep Jared Goff a little bit frustrated early, but I do think the rushing attack is going to take over pretty much into the second, third quarter and dominate into the fourth quarter. I think the Detroit Lions could go into halftime as a 20-10 favorite. I think they could go into, a 21-13 favorite even, but I do think the end game is going to be very strong for the Detroit Lions. I think they're going to be able to rush the ball out through the second half. I think that offensive line is going to just start to lean on the Carolina Panthers' poor rushing defense, and I think they're going to take this. I think David Montgomery could have a career day. I think Jahmyr Gibbs could potentially rush for 100 yards if given the opportunity. This is going to be a game won on the ground by the Detroit Lions. And in an ironic twist of fate of how this game went last year, I think the Lions dominate them on the ground. I think the Detroit Lions come out at home, get a huge victory, a blowout victory in front of the home fans. And I think they continue to roll to 4-1 going through week 5. But with all that being said, that is all I have for you guys today. That is my analysis and breakdown of the week 5 matchup for the Detroit Lions, as the Detroit Lions welcome Carolina to Ford Field to take on as the Detroit Lions welcome Carolina to Ford Field as they take on the Carolina Panthers in Week 5 of the 2023 NFL season. Let me know down in the comments below how you see this matchup going. If you're a Lions fan, let me know how you feel about this game. How confident are you feeling? How confident do you think we should be going into this game? And if you're a Panthers fan that came across this video, first off, please subscribe if you enjoyed the video. But second, let me know how you feel about your team. How do you feel about the defense? Are there any major injuries returning? I didn't necessarily see one like Jamison Williams or Emmanuel Mosley making their debut, but if there are, let me know down in the comments below. We'll be coming out with an injury report tomorrow, talking about the players that are in, out, likely, and doubtful to play. But for now, that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you all so very much for watching, and until next time, and as always, go Lions.